Well, that jump start in the second half just wasn't good enough, and Kansas State falls to 1-3 to head into the bye week.
You are Locked On Kansas State, your daily podcast on the Kansas State Wildcats, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, welcome on into Locked On Kansas State, your daily Kansas State Wildcats podcast. I'm your host, Christian Rao, and thank you so much for making Locked On Kansas State your first listen every single day. Welcome back to my everydayers. We're going to dive into this episode today, unfortunately, of Arizona losing to Kansas State losing to Arizona 23-17. And I see the comments already coming in there. The sound is back. Sorry about that. I was on fire too. I was hyped. I was absolutely hyped so much that the sound wasn't working, but we're back, baby. We're good. And we got that all fixed up. So bring those comments in. It's a brand new stream. If you're listening and you had a comment or a question, put the little Q in front, drop all those comments and all that good stuff. Arizona beating Kansas State 23-17. And just what an egregious game. I want to give you my too long didn't read at the beginning of this whole thing before we really dive into the offense, defense, special teams, all that good things. And the first things that come to my mind is the total defense. I mean, the total offensive yards, the defense, the offense, you name it. 412 yards for Arizona compared to 193 for Kansas State. We're going to just top the surface here before we really dive deep. That just can't happen. That just can't happen. The running game, still atrocious. You thought Dylan Edwards was going to come back, maybe kickstart that, little jumpstart my heart, if you will. Plays 4 plays. Had 2 good plays, but then gets hurt again. High ankle sprains. I mean, they're no joke, but that hurts. That really hurts to have. Avery Johnson got, 7 rushing attempts for negative 16 yards. And with the exception of one of them, he tripped, and that's definitely his fault. With the exception for one of them, the offensive line was terrible on every single one of his runs. Blame it on play calling, which you absolutely should, because the play calling was atrocious. There's no more hiding that or try to giving benefit of the doubt for play calling anymore. It was absolutely terrible. There was multiple times when Avery Johnson was running ball. This is just one example where the offensive line was turning around yelling, "Look out," because he was already had 5 guys on him in the backfield. It was insane. It was absolutely insane. I already saw a comment in there. Keep them coming. Is the Ireland curse real? It might be. It very well might be. Every single team since 2022 that's lost in Dublin hasn't made it to a bowl game. 4-8. That coach was fired, Scott Frost. 5-7 and 2-10 Florida State. Are we Florida State of this year? Is Kansas State Florida State of this year? Is it that bad? Look at the rest of the schedule. Let me know in the comments. What wins do you see for the rest of the season for Kansas State? That's what I want to know. What do you see? The play calling is terrible. Matt Wells, something needs to change with the Matt Wells play calling, whether that means somebody else is calling the plays, somebody else is the offensive coordinator. I'm not one that likes to call for people's jobs, but it's safe to say that there is a drastic change that needs to happen with this Kansas State football team. We all know the talent that is on this roster, and it is just not there. Not when it comes to the play calling right now. How many times was there a 3rd down and short, 4th down and short, you went for it, and there was a pass play, a 3-yard out pass play in front of the sticks to not get the conversion? Just terrible. Just absolutely terrible. It was probably one of the worst nights for Avery Johnson as well. 45% completion rating. Made some really bad calls. Really bad playmaking decisions. Overall, really was a bad game. And this is where it irks me. Before we really dive in here, this is what it really irks me here, guys. Folks, I should say. You just lost to Army, a service academy, and you fell flat in the first half. This is where it all fell apart because you woke up in the second half. It felt like a brand new team that was coming out of halftime with the Jace Brown big 70-yard run, with the interception, with the blocked punt, all that stuff. That felt like Kansas State football. But the first half puts you in such a big, deep of a hole. And how are you going to let that happen? After losing to Army last week, a service academy, I thought going into Army last week that you'd want to be mad. You'd want to make a statement win. You'd want to be with a chip on your shoulder because you almost lost to North Dakota. And I went out and made a score prediction saying, you know what? they're going to do that. They're going to win by 30-something points. Chris Kleiman's going to make a statement and prove that this team is once and for all a team that should be reckoned with in the Big 12. That didn't happen. The opposite happened, and they lost to Army. So then you would think, okay, it's a short week, understand that, but they're traveling. This is a perfect opportunity to get right. This is a Big 12 opponent. You have the vengeance and the anger to say, look, we beat this team by 31-7 last year. We know we can beat this team. It's not the same Arizona team, but we know we can. This is a perfect opportunity to get right. It's a freebie because it's not a conference game. And you fall flat in the first half. 44 yards in the first half. I saw somewhere in the stats where it said it was the worst first half, I think, since 2015. I think that's where I saw it. I had it on paper somewhere, but I threw a couple of my papers on the ground. I was pretty angry. I just don't get it. Has Avery Johnson regressed? There's been moments where, I've been pounding the drum, beating the drum this entire week, saying he needs to run the football. Only 3 carries against Army. He had 17 last year against Arizona for 110 yards. There was moments where Avery Johnson could have ran on a 3rd and 10. There's a perfect 3rd and 10, clear as my head, where he could have ran and got that first down. Instead, he stopped, made not a great throw, off-balance throw that became an incompletion. They wound up having to punt the football. Is it play calling that's telling him to do that? Is it Avery Johnson is, for the lack of better terms, afraid to run the football? What is going on there? Where does the finger need to be pointing on why this run game is not to where it needs to be? Because it's rough. It is absolutely rough. And maybe having Dylan Edwards back would have fixed that. Because I wasn't sure. If you're an everydayer and you've listened to me this past week, I said I'm not sure if the return of Dylan Edwards would actually fix the running game. Well, that small taste we had of Dylan Edwards, he was breaking tackles, he was moving the rock. So maybe it was. We finally saw Antonio Martin in the backfield a little bit, little chipping here and there, 3 yards, 4 yards a pop. But then they stopped going to him, or they'd go to him at the wrong times, wrong moments. Play calling yet again. Just terrible and egregious. Play calling needs to be fixed. And whether that means leaving somebody on the tarmac or making a different change in organizational structure, or just saying somebody else is calling the plays. Because I know the easiest thing, and we're going to probably get to that in the mailbag in the comments later on in the show, and leave your thoughts and comments in the comments, because we're definitely getting to them. We're going to be here as long as we can on this show today. But there's definitely going to be that conversation, or there's going to be at least one that says a guy like Matt Wells needs to go. Chris Kleiman needs to go. Joe Kleinerman needs to go. They're going to be there. I understand that. But I'm going to just kind of beat you to the punch here for the Matt Wells situation. If he gets fired, which I do think we're down that path, we're heading in that direction, who calls the plays? Say if it happens this week or during the bye week, who calls the plays? Luke Wells? What's that look like? Is it any better? What does that do for the composure of Avery Johnson, Jace Brown, Lincoln Cure, who we finally saw, who had a great block, didn't really make anything on the stat sheet, but had a great block. He's gonna be good, kids. He's gonna be good. Excited for that. But what's that do to the confidence of those offensive players, especially since we're talking the Wells conversation, in a world where the portal is going to be wide open in just a few weeks' time, and only for one time only in January? So once the season's over, there's one decision for those kids to make, those college kids to make. And recency bias is always a thing, especially in sports. You're a sports fan, you know what recency bias is all about. If they feel like they can't run it back, they're just going to leave. Portal season might hurt Kansas State a ton if they can't bounce back and at least just have a respectable year. I mean, statistically, not realistically, but statistically, Arlington is still a thing. I don't think that's a thing. I don't think this team has what it takes to beat a Baylor, beat a Utah, beat a Texas Tech. I don't even know how they're going to look against UCF in Colorado or TCU. Like, I don't know. We got about a week and a half, 2 weeks to figure that out before we take on UCF. But overall, it's just it's an interesting Interesting moment here for Kansas State. I want to dig in more about the offense. I want to talk about the defense because they let up so many yards. There was moments where I was excited for the defense and I was willing to say, you know what, the yards is just a number. But then as soon as I had that thought, something else kept going on. A third down, a fourth down. That was just a conversion. That was just absolutely egregious. Let's dive more into that next, right here on Locked On Kansas State. But first, this episode is brought to you by Mazda. The Mazda moving the game forward for those who believe it's not just about playing the game, it's about redefining it. There are moments that do more than put points on the board. They move crowds, move culture, and keep moving the game forward. This week's moment that moved the game forward, I mean, you probably got to give it to Jace Brown in that second half. If you're picking one from Kansas State, it's got to be that run in the Wildcat where only had 44 yards in the first half. And then Jace Brown just doubles that basically with a 70-yard rush for a touchdown. Put life back in the Wildcats. Just wasn't enough life to get it done. So that's where I'm going for the player who moved the game forward. So when you follow what moves you, the unexpected is only the beginning. And just like there's more to every highlight, there's more to a Mazda vehicle. Mazda, move and be moved. Kansas State falling to Arizona, moving to 1-3, falling 23-17. This is the biggest win in Brett Brennan's college coaching career, especially at Arizona. It's huge. Did you see the smile on his face? If you stayed long enough to watch the presser, not the presser, but the Fox interview before they changed the channel, before I clicked it off and started this stream for the first time where there's no volume. Did you hear what he said? He was just ecstatic. Smile ear to ear. He knew what he did. He knew he stole one. He stole one from a team that's absolutely struggling. These other Big 12 coaches know what this Kansas State team should be. And I think that's the most frustrating part. I think that's the most frustrating part, that we're sitting here today at 1-3, where you look at every single one of those games and you look back at them and you say, there's no reason why we shouldn't have been able to win every single one of those football games. Now, we deserve to lose every single one of those football games that we played, even the North Dakota one. Deserved is a strong word, and I'm sticking to it. But there's also a moment in every single one of these games, all four of them, where you could say, yeah, we could be 4-0 right now. Should is a different conversation. Because should means that you have a better first half tonight against Arizona. Should means you get the defense off the field in the second half against Army. And then Iowa State's what Iowa State is. It's kind of crazy to think of how well we played against Iowa State. Now, looking back to week 0, compared to how we played these other 3 games. And Iowa State looks like they're going to be pretty good this year. They look like they're going to be pretty good. The defense frustrated me. Let me know what you thought about the defense in this one overall. At first, I was looking at this defense multiple times. I was like, we're not getting enough pressure. This is most of my first half thoughts. We're just not getting enough pressure in the first half. Why are we only rushing 4? We don't have faith in our safeties and in our corners. Maybe it's because the safeties weren't doing their job. Zayshawn Rich, I thought, had a decent game at moments, right? Definitely some targets that he dropped down. Be interested to see those advanced data when that comes out, advanced stats, because there's always a lot of targets towards Zayshawn Rich. I always wonder why. However, every time I'd get this a little bit of a feeling, say, okay, this defense, although they're letting stuff up, break, don't bend, if you will. This is an Arizona team that that allowed 40 points or scored 40 points in each of their last 2 games. So I was a little bit kind of pleased. And then there'd be a 3rd and 16. And they dump it off to the running back 3 yards deep, and the running back would get 12 or 13 yards and get a first down. Or there'd be a 3rd and 6, and Noah Fifita, a guy who had negative rushing yards in his college career before tonight, went all over the place. He was insane. Fifita rushed for 48 yards on 15 carries in this one, including a 15-yard rush. That might not sound like a lot, but that's a ton for Noah Fifita. When you look at his college numbers and statistics, I think he only had 20-something yards heading into the game this year on his season stats. Career-wise, it was in the negatives. So just didn't have a good game. And then, of course, the FCS transfer, Mahdi of Arizona, rushed for almost 200 yards. 22 carries, 189 yards, had a 60-yard rush, averaged over 8.5 yards per carry. That defensive rush game was just dreadful. They did a really good job stopping Fifita passing the football. I'll give them that, but Fifita didn't have to really make too many passes because the running game was working. You know, the Trey Spivey incident where there was the targeting on Logan Bartley, first I thought it was a heck of a play. I hope that doesn't change the way Logan Bartley plays the game of football, because he might be one of the guys that you need to just make sure he does not leave. If there is a mass exodus because of the record this year, because of a coaching change, you got to do anything you can to keep a guy like Logan Bartley, because I think he's the real deal. So I hope that targeting call that happened, and I understand that it is targeting. I don't agree with the rule in that sake, but it's hard to disagree if it's already called targeting on the field. But I hope it doesn't change his energy. And just before that, a few plays before, Ryan Davis got a late hit. It's a pretty lazy late hit. They shouldn't have called that either. But you're starting to see a little bit of energy from the defense. Even though it's like bonehead energy, getting those penalties, it was still something, right? It was a pulse. You're looking for anything when you're just sitting here hoping that they can just do something. And the Ryan Davis penalty, the Logan Bartlett targeting penalty, was almost like poking the defense with a stick. That's what it felt like. And then the second half, things turned around, at least for the offense. But the defense continued to not be able to get off the field. If you're looking at plays, total plays, Arizona 79, Kansas State 53. Again, just couldn't get the defense off the field. Time possession, Arizona had 36 minutes to Kansas State's 23. Not as bad as the Army game, but still bad. You're talking 2 weeks in a row where you're almost double outdone on time of possession. That just can't happen. It just can't happen if you want to win football games in the Big 12. And that's where you're heading next. You got, most likely, with the exception of maybe Oklahoma State, assuming that Gundy is not going to be there at the end of the season, or maybe he's fighting for his life then, so maybe Oklahoma State turns it around. So I'm going to go out on a limb and say you're going into probably, most likely, your easiest Big 12 opponent in 2 weeks in UCF. Because Scott Frost is clearly in a rebuild. Although they haven't lost a football game yet, they don't look the greatest, but neither do we. So if you're looking to try to make any type of a step forward and to salvage this season, if you lose the UCF, what happens the following week against Baylor and TCU, and then Texas Tech, and then Utah? And then don't remind us about, trying to keep a streak alive. Does that streak even matter this year? Like, are you already ruling that streak out, the Sunflower Showdown, after losing to Arizona and Army? What are you thinking about that? The game in Lawrence, that's there. It's been a very close game the last couple seasons. That's there for sure. So it's interesting. I hope the portal doesn't get crazy, but that's where my mindset initially went. I even tweeted it out during the game. A lockdown K-State. I said the portal's about to get wild this year if this doesn't get turned around, because it could mean a mass exit of coaching staff. If that's the case, the portal's wide open. It could happen. We'll see. I'm interested to see what Chris Kleiman says in the presser. We're going to get that out for you. That'll probably come out in the afternoon tomorrow. That's probably when we'll get that out to you. We'll let everybody sleep, and then you can wake up to another episode. I think that's fair. That's fair for sure. And of course, we'll probably delay it just slightly because we are heading into an off week. But we will have a reaction to Chris Kleiman's and the players, whoever they talk to tonight in their press conference. All right, I want to get to all of your comments and your questions because there's a good amount. So if you haven't got to that already, leave your questions and comments in there, and we're going to do that next right here on Locked On Kansas State. But first, this episode of Locked On Kansas State is brought to you by Drip Drop. When I'm in need my top hydration, I notice, well, really when I want to be in my top hydration form, I notice that everything works better. My energy, my mood, my focus, my skin, but getting enough fluids every day isn't always easy. And that's why I love using Drip Drop. This is actually a product that I use every day. I actually started using it before my coffee now because I like the way it makes me feel. The orange flavor is my go-to. I'm big original flavor on the orange. The berry actually hits pretty good too. But Drip Drop's a doctor-developed and scientifically proven for fast hydration. It uses the perfect balance of sodium electrolytes and glucose to help your body absorb fluids quickly, delivering 3 times the electrolytes and half the sugar of your leading sports drink. So check it out, because right now Drip Drop is offering Locked On listeners 20% off your first order. Just head to dripdrop.com and use promo code LOCKEDONCollege. That's dripdrop.com, promo code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Check that out now. And this episode also is brought to you by DoorDash. Tomorrow, and it's almost the weekend. I know Kansas State doesn't play football this weekend, but there's a really good slate of football on. If you want to kick back and maybe just forget about the game that we just watched, I want to talk about and crown this week's MVP on Who Delivered. Powered by DoorDash, just like you can win every Saturday with DoorDash. Streaks, saving more every time you order. These players delivered when it mattered most. Let's break it down. I don't know if you can say who mattered most, but I want to give it to American Fortberry. That hit that he had on that block punt, that might have been the hardest hit I have seen in Kansas State in a decade. That was awesome. In that second half, that Fortenberry hit was absolutely huge. I really like seeing him on the field. It's great seeing him back on the field because we didn't see him last week. And he's getting my MVP for Who Delivered by DoorDash. So just like Fortenberry, Who Delivered for Kansas State, DoorDash delivers your Saturdays with DoorDash Streaks. You save every Saturday you order, stack up all season, and you could save up to $250, including $100 in DoorDash credits. So order this Saturday, keep the streak alive. Fuel your game day only with DoorDash. Terms apply. Promo period ends November 18th. All right, let's get into these comments here. Again, Locked On K-State. Hit that subscribe button as well if you haven't already. We're continuing to grow. We're going to have a lot of coverage during the off week. We're going to build all this stuff up. We're going to talk about what goes wrong. We're going to dive deep probably in every position group because we have the time to do so. And we're going to get some basketball coverage both on the men's and women's side because there's some things I've definitely wanted to talk about. And what's crazy is we're only like 6 weeks away from that exhibition game against Missouri. Like we're only 6 weeks away from that. So we're going to get into all that talk and so much more as we head up to the UCF game. So hit that subscribe button now so you don't miss a single episode on Locked On Kansas State. I'm going right to the top of these comments here. Appreciate everybody. Let me know the sound's working this time. Jake Stewart, shout out to Jake Stewart. I always see you on socials as well. We're going 3-9 at best, most likely 11-1. You know, that's interesting. And I looked at the schedule. This is actually something that I was texting Spencer McLaughlin of Locked On College Football during the game because we were going at it. We were talking about this game and wondering what was going wrong with Kansas State. And I said, let's look at this schedule. Where do you see these wins? What are doable wins for Kansas State right now? Like, how do you feel about the rest of the season? And I said, UCF seems doable. Now, for the record, I'm going to be completely transparent. I'm one that's not afraid to say I'm wrong. I thought we could beat Iowa State. I said that game would be a coin flip. Said that all off season long. I said we should be able to easily, handily beat North Dakota and Army. I never even thought that would be an issue. And I thought that this game against Arizona would be a win as well. Thought Brett Brennan's defense wasn't going to be the same. Thought he was going to be on the hot seat. I think that changes now for them. I think it does. Got to give a lot of credit to Arizona. But either way, still where I'm at. I think UCF is still beatable. Scott Frost being in a rebuilding year, he's still got quarterback issues, quarterback troubles. That's always a problem when you're talking, especially in the Big 12. So I think that's a doable win, especially since you're coming off the bye week. UCF plays Bill Belichick's North Carolina. They haven't been the greatest, but they play them next week. So that's a nice taste that you can see what UCF is while we're sitting on the bye next week. Then Oklahoma State, based on how they looked against Oregon, I think that's a doable win. And then Colorado doesn't impress me at all. And that's the final game of the season. Those are the three that I only really feel comfortable with, is those 3 games. Then you have Baylor, who, if this secondary continues to do what they're doing, that's going to be a long day for Kansas State's defense against Baylor. You might win the time possession battle, though, because they're going to score really quickly if the way that this continues. Texas Tech, they look like the real deal. Looks like that offseason money actually worked, at least so far. We'll see how they look against Oregon State tomorrow. Utah looks tough. Kansas, I mean, there's been moments for Kansas. They did lose to Mizzou, but there's moments. They hung in against that SEC school for a while. That could be a really tough game in Lawrence. So, and then TCU looked great against UNC. So all of those games that I mentioned, I don't know how you can say that you go in right now as a favorite. If you're looking at our friends at FanDuel, I bet that any of those games I just mentioned on the second half, you're not favorites. You're probably a favorite against UCF still. You're probably a favorite against Oklahoma State. And then it could be really close against Colorado, I think. I'm just not impressed with Colorado. So appreciate the comment there, Jake. Obligated comic. Do you think that Kansas State should go back to the 3-3-5, or do you think that's not part of the problem? You know what? I could see that being maybe a good thing, but the secondary is an issue. But I think it stems from not getting enough pressure fast enough either. Because what I noticed, there were some moments in the second half where the secondary kind of stepped up. Other than those plays where either gassed might be the excuse again, or just lack of execution. Other than those 3rd and 18s, those 3rd and 10s towards the end of the game, there was moments where that secondary stepped up in the second half. Looking at Zayshawn Rich, I thought there was a couple good plays by the safeties. They started bringing some pressure as well. If you move to a 3-3-5, your core pressure is only rushing 3. There was moments at the beginning of the game where I said I wasn't happy that they were rushing 4, only 4, because we weren't getting enough pressure to Noah Fifita. We were letting him have a lot of time to think about what they wanted to do. They weren't getting enough pressure at the line of scrimmage to stop the run game. So I think moving to a 3-3-5 might help somewhat. I think against Baylor, it might be a good idea, but maybe against some of these other schools, I don't know if that's the right decision. So I don't know if that's the immediate impact or if that's something that changes everything, but it's not a bad idea to look at. But I definitely think you got to find a way to still bring pressure. And with the 3-3-5, I don't know if that helps at all. Okay, Xavier here. Starting a new quarterback, seeing examples of teams change quarterback and change their season. Oh, look, that's a strong take, and I'm all for it here. This is probably one of the worst games we saw from Avery Johnson, at least this season. I think it's easily his worst game of the season. And I mean, you want to say that it's all his fault or not? I'll leave you be the judge for that one. I think there was some terrible play calling from Avery Johnson. I think that when you're talking about the rushing game, him trying to open it up, the offensive line was egregious, and I think that was terrible. But there were some moments where they were really just trying to feed Jace Brown and Jace Brown only. Like they forgot about everybody else on the field. And that was pretty easy. If we were seeing that on the TV, or if you're at the game on the road, then it's probably safe to say that the coaching staff in Arizona saw it as well. And there was a lot of plays that just forced Avery to make decisions that you don't really think Avery Johnson always wants to make. But there was also some moments where there was a 3rd down and 10. That's a perfect example for me. A 3rd down and 10 where Avery Johnson was rolling out to the right side, trying to make a pass. And he had room maybe to make one move to get a first down. He might have had to break a tackle. He could have at least rushed for 7 at the very most before getting touched. But instead of taking off for a run, he decides to throw an off-balance throw to the receiver, short of the sticks, incomplete pass. They have to punt it. There's a 4th and 10 instead of potentially a 4th and 3 at the very worst. And that's why I'm wondering, is Avery Johnson, is he scared? Is it just a play calling? What is? And if we think it's the play calling, then what is an unproven quarterback going to do for this offense? Nothing. So I don't think this is the right move. I think it's an interesting strategy. I think it's interesting, Javier, absolutely. But I'm not going to go with that saying benching Avery Johnson is the way to go just to try and get a jump start on this offense. I think there's other ways to do that, at least right now. Is the Ireland curse real? I think we already talked about that. Stats don't lie right now. You're right. As I mentioned, 4-8, 5-7, 2-10. Those are the 3 teams other than Kansas State over the last 3 years that have lost in Ireland, and none of them have made a bowl game. Danny boy, let's check in with the men's basketball team. PJ Haggerty, please save my season. Please save my year this winter. Please just do it. Just give me the warm and fuzzies inside. 6 weeks till basketball season. Isn't that crazy? The women's too, right? Sweet 16. Can we do that again? Brand new team. That's going to be fun to watch. Lots of stuff on this one. I think, Jake, you're talking about how I asked about the schedule. UCF and Oklahoma State are at best for wins. I'm with you. I think that's when you look at this schedule, I mean, UCF, Oklahoma State. I'm adding Colorado to that mix too. I mean, maybe they'll figure out their 3 quarterbacks or who's it there by then, because it's the final game of the season. I'm just not impressed with Colorado this year. They didn't look very good against Houston. I only watched the first half. I turned it off when Kansas State game played. So if it changed in the second half, then I'm going to watch that later, and I can change my tune when we talk later on in the week. But from what I saw at the beginning, I was not impressed with Colorado by any means. Preston, looks like you're saying the same things. Maybe wins at UCF, Oklahoma State, Colorado, but otherwise it's grim. I'm with you. So it sounds like we're on the same page. That means there's a lot of other teams on this schedule that sound iffy, right? So what's that put us? Say if you just win out those 3 games we're talking about, that's a 4-8 season. That's and then even if you go 50-50 on the other ones, that's 6-6, right? You get to a bowl game, but that's not a successful season. If you fall less than 8-4, I mean, how many times have you heard, if you're on social media or if you're just at the bar talking to some of your friends, Kansas State fans, how many people are upset at 8-4 year in and year out? And you get that 9th win in the bowl and you're still like, not enough. What's this year going to feel like? If you're 6-6, 7-5, 8-4, that's tough. It means you got to win every game but one the rest of the way. Is that doable? I mean, yeah, technically, statistically, yes. Realistically, no. I put that on a t-shirt. I think I said that so many times so far this last couple weeks. Statistically, yes. Realistically, no. My God. 2015 OU was Kansas State 0, OU 55 in Manhattan. I'm not sure what that comment was, but thank you for the memory on that one. Wells need to go, Keenan Crane, and Riley should have stayed. You know, there has been so much thought process over the offseason. When Riley left for Dallas, and I just got a lot of comments on there of people being really excited, saying they were excited for him going to Dallas, but they're also excited that he's leaving Kansas State. And there was talks because they didn't like his play calling. They didn't like that. They loved him as an offensive line coach. I don't think they ever wanted him to leave as the offensive line coach. That was the thing that almost every single one of the comments on my videos that we talked about that this offseason when he left about is the offensive line. And so far, this offensive line doesn't look great. This offensive line is struggling. Even in the pass protection this week, it was bad. And that's something that we talked about all week. That was good. It was one of the best things they've had all season. The run blocking was bad. The pass blocking was bad. Now, Arizona's defense has mightily improved from 122nd in total defense to top 25 in total defense in the country heading into this game. But they only played Hawaii and Weber State. Now, after playing Kansas State, those numbers actually mean something now. Arizona would not shock me. They're not going to be ranked by any stretch of the imagination, but it would not shock me is when the new AP poll comes out that there's a couple votes in there for Arizona. They're going to be in that bottom line of receiving votes because that defense is legit. That defense looks like they're going to be okay. I think Brett Brennan's turned this team around, moving some players around, let a lot of people leave in the portal, brought in the right players. Sounds like he got some culture fits. That's the way you work in the transfer portal era, in the era of NIL. You bring in the players that fit your culture. If they don't, well, you move on from them quickly. It's the only way that you have to. 3-7 since that KU win last year. Is that where it all went south? Or was it the Houston game? My buddy on Locked On Cougs, Parker Ainsworth, loves to say that Houston broke Kansas State. Is that true? Is that true? And the wheels fell off against Houston last season? Hasn't been the same since. So is it the Houston game? Or is it the close win against Kansas? Where are you pointing at? Or the Colorado game where Avery wasn't 100%? Is that there as well? Right? Terrible, terrible play selection. Probably try a new quarterback. Okay, so the second one of thinking quarterback. I'm not there yet on the quarterback. I completely agree with you, Jack, on the terrible play selection. I tried to give Matt Wells the benefit of the doubt a little bit in the beginning of the season. After Iowa State, I wasn't ready to say that it was the play calling. You know, I was willing to give the benefit of the doubt of the weather. I was willing to give the benefit of the doubt of not having Dylan Edwards. I was willing to be malleable with my takes on that, 100%. Then North Dakota game came, and I started getting a little bit curious. Last week, I was really kind of dumb with it last week. This one solidified the cake. The experiment of whatever the play calling is right now at Matt Wells is over in my mind. But I'm not ready to try a new quarterback. I'm not ready for that yet. They shouldn't have fourth down must-haves. I saw something, a good buddy, John Grove, over at GoPowerCat.com. He's came on the show a couple times as well. He put out a stat that Kansas State has allowed, I think it was 12 or 15 fourth down conversions so far this season. So for the opposing team has gone 12 for 15 on fourth downs. It was either 12 for 15 or 12 for 14. Either way, that's terrible. You can't do that. That's amazing for the other team. Why would you punt? Why would you want to give the ball over when you have more than a 90% chance of making it? So I don't disagree with that at all. As for the defense, I've seen better coverage than State Farm. There you go. State Farm, you got the khakis too, I'm sure, right? So 100% on all this, guys. I see a couple people just comment back and forth. I love the chats in here, the comments. I really do appreciate it. So we're not going to have another live reaction show until after UCF. So while everybody's here, what is your record prediction for the rest of the year? Drop in the comments. What are you saying the Kansas State finishes record-wise to finish this season? And what is your way too early score prediction for UCF? Drop that in the comments below as we get out of here, get ready to go. Colorado got clocked by Houston. Dion is an absolute chump. Okay, street crawler. So they did. Like I said, I didn't watch the second half of that game, so I'll have to go back and watch the highlights to that one. But you said I did see Houston won. Connor Wegman looks like he's a good fit. Willie Fitz is a good coach. He's a really good coach. What he did at Tulane, moving to Houston. You see Houston's recruiting. Houston's bringing in some 5 stars. I think they've finally found their right formula for moving from the American to the Big 12. I think out of all the teams that made that jump up, when you're looking at West Virginia, Cincinnati, UCF, Houston, I think they're going to be the most successful right off the bat. On the football side, they're already doing really good on the basketball side, which we already knew that was the case. That's kind of how they came over in the first place. But I think they finally figured it out. Their formula looks like it's working out. They have a lot of good recruits coming in. And that's another thing. We talk about the portal being probably wide open if a coaching staff changes. What about Miles Tydecki? What about some of these Keegan Collins? What about some of these recruits that Kansas State brought in this year? Do they decommit? Do we see these tweets coming soon, maybe in this off week, saying respect my decision, but I decided to reopen my commitment? You think that's going to happen? I think it could happen. The best way to keep recruits for you next year is to keep winning football games, to live up to expectations. What are this coaching staff and these recruiting staffs promising these kids of what you're going to see of a culture and a program like Kansas State? Winning tradition is probably one of them. Is that something you can sell right now? Not one bit. Not when you're 1-3. And you're 1-3 against teams that you should be 4-0 against, 3-1 at the least. So I just don't know it. Oh, Street Caller said, I was at the CU game. Unfortunately, they are the worst fans in football. Okay, so there you go. Colorado is not that good. Understand. All right. Arizona's defense, scary fast. Rudy, I agree with you. I think Arizona could be the shocking team. Are we going to go 2 years in a row? This is probably a super overreaction take, but let's put it out there just for fun. Are we going to go 2 years in a row where an Arizona team starts from the bottom and makes their way all the way from the top? Now, I know we didn't have a Big 12 media poll, and it's probably for a good thing because they'd probably be laughed at hard. Because if you listen to people talk about at Big 12 media days who they thought was going to be the favorites, it was Kansas State and Arizona State. And both those teams are not living up to their potential by any stretch of the imagination. But last year, if you remember, there was a Big 12 preseason media poll. Arizona State was predicted to finish last, and they won the whole dang thing. Well, the Big 12 media, the whole media days didn't do a preseason poll, but us that Locked On Big 12 did. The whole Big 12 squad did. And Arizona was at the bottom. Arizona was predicted at the bottom. either 15th or 16th. It was either them or UCF, if I remember correctly. Are they going to shock the world and find themselves in Arlington? I don't think that's going to happen, to be completely honest. But I think Brett Brennan gets them to at least a bowl game. I mean, they're already 3-0. They're already halfway there. That defense is scary fast. I want to see how they look the rest of the season. I'm actually really interested in see how Brett Brennan can turn this around, because I truly thought he was on the hot seat this year. His defense alone and Noah Fifita, what he's doing, as long as he stays healthy, keeps Brett Brennan's job alive. Their running game looks good. It sounds like he's brought in the right transfers. So I agree with you 100%. Leroy. There was Leroy Jenkins. I got to say it right. I probably should have said it right. I'm sorry. There were so many run plays in this game where an Arizona D lineman was 4 yards in the backfield. It didn't happen when you're right. I mean, I point at the Avery Johnson runs because those are the ones that are just so easy to point out, because Avery Johnson would take the ball. He would run out off to the tackle, with the exception of the one where he tripped, which was absolutely his fault. He can't trip over his own running back. And that one looked like he might have actually had the edge. He might have actually got some yardage on that one. But every other run that Avery Johnson had, designed run, was blown up in the backfield, 3-4 yards backed up. His offensive linemen were turning around yelling, "Look out." It was terrible. And it wasn't just the Avery Johnson runs, but those are the ones that really stick out to me the most, for sure. Charlie says Iowa State and Utah probably on top. I don't disagree. I want to see what Texas Tech looks like. I think Baylor's still a really good team. That Auburn game was different, but what they did in that second half against SMU was impressive. So I agree. Arizona's going to give Iowa State fits in a couple weeks. They look good. That's going to be a really good game. You're right. It's going to be a really good game. I agree. I agree with you guys. Oh, now someone said Iowa State's trash. Is this just because of the rivalry? Is that what you're feeling? Because, I mean, they did beat us, and they did beat their foe in Iowa. So I'm trying to be transparent. I love the trash talk. I love it. And I might screenshot this and just send it straight over to my buddy at Nick Maravets and say, see, Street Caller was right. Although I don't really have the opportunity to say that, but I'm with you. All right, folks, let me know before we get out of here, 90 people listening still, sticking around here in this therapy conversation early in the AMs of Saturday morning. We got college football on in a few hours. Good stuff. Is there a chance this team can find themselves in Arlington? I'm going to leave it there. That's where I'm going to leave it. Is there a chance? Like, what is a percentage? If you had to go 0 to 100%, what would you say the percentage of a chance of this team makes it to Arlington? Because with the exception of the Iowa State game, none of those losses matter now. And that is going to be the narrative that Chris Kleiman and his coaching staff have to use. They absolutely have to use that. And us fans, of course, we hate the fact that we're 1-3 heading into this bye week. But truly, the only thing that actually matters right now is they're 0-1. Because there's no at-large bid anymore. There was no at-large bid after the Army loss, right? That was out the window. Even if you went 11-1 and Army loss, probably not getting you there. Probably not doing it. Or excuse me, you'd be 10-2 because you lost to Iowa State. So there's no way it was happening. So now you're definitely not getting an at-large bid because the best you have is a 9-3 record. So your only shot of making the college football playoffs, or Arlington, of course, is getting to the Big 12 championship game. Okay? Got it. So the only thing that matters now, once we end this stream, once the game went final about an hour ago, the only thing that matters is you're now 0-1 with a loss to Iowa State. You're not the only 0-1 team in the conference anymore. Colorado joins you. So you're not the only one at the bottom of the pile like you have been for the last couple weeks, where you've just been sitting there. If you go to the standings and you see that everybody's just got dashes next to their name except Iowa State on top and Kansas State in the bottom, well, at least there's somebody joining us in that conversation. Last year, a team that went 7-2 made it to Arlington. Now, there are some tiebreakers involved. So 7-2 can do it. That means you got to go 7-1 the rest of the way and hope for a couple miracles. Is 7-1 doable? I don't know. I don't think so. I don't think so at all. I see some 14.5% chance they make it to Arlington. I think that's the highest I saw. 5%. Technically, yes. Yeah, you're right. Technically, yes. Statistically, yes. Realistically, no. Got rough with Chris Kleiman as coach, 0%. And at 0.0%, Tech's D-line's going to dominate. And it's probably a good way to end it up here. Give it up, man. Full sale of coaches, athletic director. That's the first time I've heard the athletic director, Gene Taylor, come up when we were talking about some of these losses. But there's a lot of things. So you're saying there's a chance, says Steve Keller. Jim Carrey, I'll leave you here, Dumb and Dumber. All right, folks, please like the video. Please subscribe. We'll be back here tomorrow. We're going to bring it out probably in the afternoon, late afternoon. I'm going to react to the press conference. We're going to have that conversation here, talking about what Chris Kleiman says, talking about what any of the players they talked about, hopefully Avery Johnson. I want to hear his reactions to probably his worst game of the season, and then so much more. Then we're going to look forward to UCF, the off week. We have a full off week next week before we dive into the new week of the season. As I mentioned, we're going to talk probably positional breakdowns. We're probably going to talk about what went wrong with them, how can they be fixed, kind of do some deep dives into them because we're going to have some time to do that. Probably have some guests on as well. And then we're going to talk some basketball, both men's and women's side, because it's time. We're only 6 weeks out. It's time to get that hype train blown up. So for the sake of content, perfect timing to bring basketball back in to the conversation. So thank you so much for joining me on this late night reaction of Kansas State falling to Arizona. Hopefully we can get a better result next time we have these live conversations. So please like the video. Please subscribe. We'll see you back here next time, right here on Locked On Kansas State.